Welcome to The Longer Game. If you're listening to a show about retail being reimagined. If you'd like to connect with The Longer Game, look for The Longer Game at thelongergame.com and on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn at The Longer Game. We're here to talk about retail, why it's changing, how it's changing, and what you can expect in the future. We're not trying to take ourselves too seriously, but we do want to know what that retail landscape is going to look like. I hope you enjoy your time listening to this podcast. We try to keep it as quick as possible because we don't want to waste your time, but we want to keep you informed. Thanks for tuning in. Now, here's the show. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Longer Game podcast, where we talk about retail reimagined and the future of retail. Today, I am joined by a friend of mine that I'm getting to know better, and his name is Chris McCabe. He's the CEO of e-commerce Chris, and he'll tell you more about it, but they're really focused on helping Amazon sellers get out of suspensions or any kind of issues like that. And that's a lot of what we're going to talk about today. Just at the start of the show, I'll let everybody know Chris has a conference going on in Boston, September 23rd, and it is called the Seller Velocity Conference. Of course, 2021. Not 2020 like the Olympics did, but 2021 Seller Velocity Conference. And he has been so gracious to give us a code, just Longer Game, all one word, for anybody that wants to get a discount going in person. So Chris, thanks for joining us. Guest G4F6, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Happy to be talking to you today for a variety of reasons. I know we've talked all week about different interesting things going on in the Amazon space. So
maybe there's a dull moment, but there never seems to be a shortness of conversation that could be had. I don't know if I said that correctly, but every time I've recorded this podcast, I'm like, man, I think we could keep going for like an hour and a half. I just don't want to bore people too long.
No, I know there's kind of a glut of certain kinds of content in the Amazon space, but there is still an abundance of good content that can be presented. Maybe it's not always presented the right way or the right time, but there are worthwhile conversations to have about, just like you said, the future of retail. Because those larger questions might seem distant or vague or overwhelmingly gigantic to the point of not being useful, but I don't think we're that far from that discussion becoming part of everyone's everyday life anymore.
Well, and I think the pandemic really did. I said this on another episode, but I'm still getting messages from people like, "Hey, I hope you're hanging in there," and I'm like, if this is not the start of the pandemic, like, it's been over a year. I'm good now. Like, I think I've got it figured out. Of course, that was like an intro for a lot of people, but it's super relevant to the e-commerce industry because there was a ton of growth that happened in the first part of 2020, almost 8 to 10 years worth of growth. If you just look at e-commerce as a percent of total retail sales. And I won't bore you with the numbers, but it was a big jump. And Amazon's 40% of that. So, it's very, very relevant. And I think we're only going to continue to see e-commerce develop as a percent of sales. But we're also seeing companies like Walmart that has a big brick and mortar presence get into e-commerce. They're likely going to leverage their stores, and they already are when it comes to, refunds and things like that. Amazon's now starting to build out retail stuff. So yeah, I think it's here and right around the corner.
I think the Amazon versus Walmart, with some minor players, but Amazon versus Walmart battle for retail, the soul, the life, the future of retail. We already know that we're in it to an extent, but like you said, the battlegrounds keep changing, and that's shifting a little bit. And we're past the conversation of Amazon's dominating e-commerce marketplaces, but Walmart has all the stores, like it's going to all merge into the same conversation.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
The most exciting part of all, because maybe there'll finally be a kind of reckoning. Instead of talking about it, we will see it.
We will see D-Day daily life of retail.
Well, what if you started seeing, and people are already used to Amazon vans everywhere. They're certainly in my neighborhood.
Yeah.
What if you started seeing in 2022, you started seeing a huge investment by Walmart to have them bring stuff. There's Walmart vans out there a third of the time or half the time. Would you be that surprised?
Those Amazon truck businesses are, from what I understand, are affiliates. So anybody could go and start an Amazon basically delivery business. They give you the truck.
Yeah.
I don't know a ton about that, but
Right.
Walmart could very easily do that same thing.
And Amazon's trying to be a much bigger player in not just, I mean, shipping, but like transportation. They're going to become a transpo company and a shipping company to the point where, UPS is kind of on the Amazon side. FedEx seems to have wandered to the Walmart side, and
Okay.
they're gonna duke it out there. I mean, whether or not they buy UPS maybe won't matter. They'll be such close partners
Yeah.
that it's just going to be that fight over the last mile. And maybe there will be some other upstarts we haven't heard of yet that jump in and say, you know what? We've been doing fulfillment and transportation and shipping for 25 years already. What's the reason we can't master
Yeah.
the last mile quicker than a company like Amazon?
I
They
feel like
might be
DHL is
afraid.
another big partner, but
Hmm.
I've seen them do a lot more international stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
which is good. I mean, there's definitely a market for that. I just keep picturing the Rock'em Sock'em robots and like
Yep.
Walmart and Amazon just duking it out. The people that have the money or the CEOs of the company, Doug McMillan and
Hmm.
whoever is taking over for Bezos. I can't
Andy
remember.
Jassy.
Andy
Yeah. Andy
Jassy,
Jassy.
and they're just punching it out in the middle of
Yeah.
the ring. It
I
is
know I
exciting.
know a couple guys who work or historically have worked with and know Jassy. So for me,
Okay.
it was interesting, kind of almost I would say on a personal, professional level that he became CEO. I expected Dave Clark to be the CEO.
So you came
Um,
from Amazon, correct?
yeah, so
Okay.
backing up, I worked at Amazon. The reason I work on account suspensions and listing reinstatements and so forth, any kind of appeal strategy, is because I worked on those teams for Amazon. It's a direct
Ah,
correlation to the work I do now. So maybe that's a lack of creativity on my part. But
who cares?
when
Who
I started
cares?
consulting, it was a one-to-one relationship, and also I appreciated the gravity of the commitment to that kind of work and how people doing it themselves weren't necessarily well versed in the right way to do it. They were just kind of doing it with trial and error, which maybe back when I started this business, that was a bit more survivable. I don't see
Yeah,
that being. I see myself telling people, go ahead, take a stab at it. Maybe a second attempt if you think it's worthwhile. But after that, you need
get some
to
help.
tap out and call for some help. I mean, it doesn't have to be us, but it has to be somebody with expert level contributions to make to your cause. Otherwise,
Yeah,
they slip off into the abyss a lot quicker now, or at least get to the point where they're on the back burner and Amazon doesn't want to pay attention to them. I mean, they might have a vibrant brand that's
sure.
adding SKUs, doing you might be in the middle of a product launch. You might be,
Doesn't
kicking
matter.
ass. Oh yeah, but you'll be treated like either a newbie or somebody who's been like reoffending and getting resuspended every year. I mean, they could easily put you in some weird bucket that you don't belong in. So
Yeah,
yeah.
you brought up a couple great points, and the more that you and I talk, the more you and I seem to have a lot in common about, and so I like that, and I like hearing different opinions as well. My wife is good at helping buffer me and like, no, you really are too loud. You need to bring your voice down. This is inside.
Yeah.
But you've initially talked about there being good content out there, and you and
Mm.
I both talked about education and how it's really important. I mean, aspects of education. I posted on LinkedIn before, and told agencies, stop lying to your prospects, stop telling people that you can do Amazon work, because if you can't, if there's not a direct crossover, there is a correlation between digital marketing,
Yeah.
e-commerce capabilities and Amazon, of course, but it takes time to learn those eccentricities of what's going on there. I think about doing sales for my business. I'm the one that's doing it. Hiring someone to do sales, I'm like, it would almost need to be an account manager that then crosses over, because they can speak to the issues with clients. They're coming with very specific stuff. So there's that
Yeah.
with putting good content out there. I have a friend who actually trademarked the term entrepreneur porn, and it's essentially it's essentially like
It
the
was still
cars.
available.
It was
Yeah.
still available, but it's a great term because it's all
Hmm.
I got this laptop lifestyle and I got this, and every entrepreneur I know has had to grind it out at times and has made sacrifices. So I don't know, and I think a lot of people with an Instagram lifestyle are likely renting,
Hmm.
cars and looking cool. But if that's what you're selling, I don't want that, because it's not
Image.
real.
That's
You're
the
selling an
image is
image.
everything approach. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
I've seen a lot of people say, "Oh, I'm the school of thought of this guy on Amazon," and I'm like, a lot of times I just never really paid attention to that part of the industry, and
Hmm.
so I'd have to go look someone up and say, "Oh, okay." and they're saying these are the new 5 tactics to handle and these 7 tricks, and I'm like, it's not. That's the sexy version of Amazon. Amazon
Yeah.
is just treating it holistically, a holistic business approach, knowing that every single piece really has to be in place.
Yeah. I've been really public about saying I don't believe in like one-stop shopping companies or agencies or consultants, because the way I see Amazon marketplace related work, I don't see that you can. First of all, I've never seen one-stop shopping where they were great at everything on an
Right.
expert level. I mean, I just don't see it in this space.
Speedway.
I also know my limitations. I mean, there are sales and PPC and marketing things that
Yeah.
would greatly benefit Amazon sellers that maybe someday I'll acquire additional knowledge, and I'm happy to educate myself when I can, but those aren't things I can sell. Like, I'm
Right.
an expert on this. Just because I'm an expert in account reinstatement and listing takedown appeals doesn't mean that I'm an expert in everything Amazon.
Right.
And I mean, if that changes, then great. I mean, if somebody's great at appealing stuff, you mentioned to me earlier that you sometimes write appeals for reinstatement and they work out. I
Yeah.
mean, success is what pays the bills. So if it's working, who
Right.
am I to say stop doing it?
But one of the
Yeah.
things, so just to back up a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
for anyone who's not familiar with Amazon space so much, it's very common that if you make an offense against, you have a against Amazon or the consumer, so you
Mm-hmm.
ship something late, or you are selling what they claim to be a counterfeit good, or whatever the case might be.
Mm-hmm.
There's a list of things. Amazon will suspend your account or suppress your product, and almost with impunity, and it's now up to you to say, I didn't do this, even if you didn't do something. And they have an algorithm that links things. And
Mm-hmm.
so, and Chris can definitely speak more to this than I can, but once that algorithm locks on, you then have to prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that you're not a part of this. And I think what's really interesting about your line of work, Chris, is that you're an ex Amazon person
Yep.
who's actually doing the work they did at Amazon. And that's not always the case. Coming from Amazon, it gives you a lot of clout. And I think that's a tool. Like, if I was at Amazon, I would likely use that as well. You've got a
Mm-hmm.
direct crossover though, from working on account reinstatements and then coming out. And so you've got that insider language. That's difficult to acquire.
That communication, it's so central to how Amazon views you and how they judge you on your ability to convince them that you've properly appealed in a way that they can accept and they can reinstate your listing or your account. And it's high stakes to the point of, if you think, well, I can read a few blogs, I can look at some forums posts, I can look at some Facebook group posts
Right.
and just post something. People still do that. They post in a Facebook group, I've got this kind of suspension. Who resolved this lately? Oh, what does your appeal look like? Oh, can I use this? They're
Because
still
what
using
works
copy and
now
paste. And it's
may not have
like,
worked 6 months ago, right?
not only that, well, there are apples and oranges comparisons that they don't realize they're making, which I don't know
Okay.
why you'd want to even risk that.
Yeah.
Even the chance that you're making an apples to oranges comparison between somebody who says they had your problem or your situation is so much risk. I wouldn't even want to do it. But I mean, it depends on how much you need your business. Look, if you don't need your business that badly,
Just go for
play
it.
all the games with it you want. I mean, you can
Yeah.
just scribble something on a napkin and type it up and send it in. But if this is high stakes for you in terms of you employ people, or this is your lifeblood, you have to take the appeals process seriously, which means you have to know what kind of communication you can expect from Amazon, which is going to be generic and murky and copy and paste.
Hmm.
But that doesn't mean you can give that to them. It's a double standard, because Amazon has the power in this relationship. You need to give quality communication to them and then know what to do if they don't respect that by reviewing it properly and accepting it and reinstating you.
And
And
I
there's,
think to
yeah,
get better information, you have to know what to say in order to open up that conversation.
yeah. Well, there isn't really a conversation. It's a one-way conversation.
Sure.
If you give them what they need and it's like, okay, this meets our criteria for how we can judge this appeal and what we can base a reinstatement on, there doesn't have to be a conversation, because the next
Okay.
message you get is you've now been reinstated, right?
And it's so
If
weird. It's like
Yeah,
it's like a Christmas, but now you just actually
yeah.
get to have a paycheck again.
Yeah, yeah. Or you just expected it to be a knockdown, drag out fight, which for a lot of people it is.
Hmm.
Um, and it isn't. and they take the first appeal you submit. They still do that. It's just the percentage chance that they do it on your accepted on the first appeal, the first try, is less than it used to be, mostly because of their problems. Sometimes it's because you didn't bring your A game, and you gave them something out of haste that's incomplete, or you didn't
Yeah.
understand what they wanted, so you provided something but it's off target and off message anyway, or off topic. Or I mean, some people do call in to account health services and they say, I got to provide a plan of action, I got to provide an appeal here, what are the expectations? And sometimes they're just given bad info, or they're misled
Yeah.
by a non-seasoned, rookie kind of person who's giving them generic advice that doesn't get them into the details and the comprehensive specifics that they require in a plan of action in order to get reinstated. And it's just two sides talking past each other at that point.
Okay.
So
Well, so
your
there's
point's
different
well taken.
levels.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's different levels of factors that are at play here. So one is
Yeah.
you have very little communication from Amazon. Two is because of that, you don't necessarily know the criteria. Three
Mm-hmm.
is you're inexperienced potentially. What level of experience do you have in order to fight this and knowledge you have about Amazon? And then one of the other things is the level of knowledge of the person at Amazon, which is not guaranteed. And I think that's one of the
Random.
most, yeah, that's one of the most
Yeah.
frustrating things from a brand's point of view or a seller's point of view
Yeah.
is you don't, you could get someone that's like, oh yeah, I know exactly what I'm doing. I'll take care of this. And you get someone else that like, this is my, they don't say that, but like, I don't know, this is
Mm-hmm.
my first couple cases. I don't really know what to do. Do you know about turnover or about the amount of people that could be seasoned at seller support or seller performance, whatever the case might be? Do you have any insight into that?
Yeah, I mean, at any given moment, there should be hundreds of people, if not, low thousands globally, who are looking at this stuff and transferring things or reading things and responding. But there's such a wide range of skill level and experience level, and people who are willing to take the time to properly review an appeal. It's worth noting that they get credit for an investigation, or like an account review or an appeal review, whether or not they do a good job on it. So
Okay.
they're kind of looking for a reason to decline you and say no, because it's quicker to find a flaw and base your judgment on that than it is to thoroughly review everything, accept all of that content, and say, yes, we can take this. It's counterintuitive. You would think they're trying to save themselves work by looking through something quickly and saying, yeah, this is fine. This includes everything.
Yeah.
We'll just reinstate this guy or this woman. And it's not. It's much quicker to be like, this part looks a little vague, or this looks a little weak in the plan of action. Or maybe it's like not even the plan of action. Maybe it's supply chain documentation. This invoice looks a little funky, or there's something
Yeah.
missing here. That is much quicker for them, even though they know they're
That's
making more
crazy.
work for their team down the road. And
That's
that's what,
gold right there. That is gold. So
yeah.
any brand that's listening right now, know that if you're and I love what you said about you don't need to hire us, but you're going to have to hire an expert. I say that all the time about brands that want to actually grow on Amazon. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, it's very tough out there. You don't have to hire me. I can recommend another service provider that I'm friends with that
Right.
would do good work, but you're going to have to find an expert. If you don't, you're going to end up paying someone, a lot less to do not good work,
Right.
or you could get schemed into paying a lot more and also not getting good work, but the business development was great. But it doesn't matter. You have to, at this point, you have to find an expert. But if you're listening in your brand and you're dealing with any kind of suspension, product suppression, you have to have an ironclad plan of action. So when Amazon suspends you, they say you need to put together a plan of action to address these things. And it's, again, like Chris said, it's very vague. And so you have to go in detail and say, this is what we did. Here's what we're gonna do. Here's what we've been doing. Provide evidence of that, actual evidence of that.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're not doing that, then it's going to be very, very difficult to get your appeal approved. So you might as well save yourself time. And I think hire an expert. And yeah, it might be additional money, but if you look, like you said, if it's your livelihood, what would paying? I would say I don't even know what the pricing would be, but like let's say an appeal costs $3,000. If
Right.
you're making over $1 million, what does $3,000 mean to you? In terms of in comparison to your business.
I mean, typically we're working with brands that are losing, like when their top pacing goes down, they're losing 3,000 a day.
Yeah, it's a
So if they
significant
spend a
impact.
week appealing it, then that's 21 grand, I mean, whatever, however many days it takes them to either decide to continue on. Some people approach us and I say, you're at like a decision point. You're at a fork in the road. You're either going to talk to me for like an hour and I'm going to give you my best tips, guidance, strategy, whatever. And you're going to commit come hell or high water to doing this yourself, whatever the results are, or you're going to kind of pull the parachute cord now and get somebody else in it now. But make that decision today. Don't waffle. Don't halfway it because some people are like, well, we're going to try this a few more times and then we're going to call you if it doesn't work. Nowadays, I mean, I used to say kind of, okay, well, let us know if you need anything.
Yeah.
Nowadays, I'm like, if you're trying this a few more times before I even start, knowing that it's going to take me at least a few days to assess, draft it, get your feedback on the draft, finalize it, have you submit, a few more days for them to look at it if they don't answer within 48 hours. You're already talking about several days of lost sales. You're talking about thousands of lost dollars.
So it's not that Amazon would penalize you for trying to do something and not winning. It's just that you're going to continue to lose
Well,
revenue.
eventually they stop feeling like they have to respond to you anymore.
Okay.
If they think they give you a few chances. I mean, we used to use the 3 strikes and you're out adage, and you wouldn't be out of the game, but you're out for like that, attempt at doing this yourself.
Yeah.
I don't even know if I say 3 strikes anymore. I tell people like take a shot at it. If it doesn't work, hire us.
Yeah.
Take a second try at it if you think you can appropriately revise your appeal. Even with me jumping in and like coaching people for an hour, like when they show me their appeal and I give them some inline, feedback or some critiques or suggestions. I mean, there's a certain percentage of those that are going to bounce back just because nobody read it.
Yeah.
And then you have to understand, well, is it time to escalate it or not? Should I get it into a manager's hands? I mean, you can't escalate something if it's a low quality appeal. That's the big thing I see a lot of brands doing to harm themselves is I got a copy and paste response. They didn't say why it was rejected. That means it wasn't read, or that means a bot read it. And I need to escalate it. And I'll say, whoa, slow down, show it to me. I can look at something. I've done this thousands of times now. I can look at it.
That's crazy.
Within 5 or 10 minutes, I can tell you whether you've got something that can be escalated, but with some edits and tweaks, that can't be escalated and shouldn't be anywhere near an escalation. Or, you look like you've done this before. This looks adequate to me. You just have to figure out where to complain that no one's reviewed it for you yet. And believe me, managers and VPs at Amazon at this point, well, at least the marketplace management side of Amazon, they know that these things aren't being properly read or reviewed or and if you call account health services again, they'll look at denial notes for your appeals, or they might not tell you what they say exactly, but they can see if there's like 3 or 4 words on your account that was just somebody putting some BS in there that didn't want to spend time annotating your account. They know it's obvious to you, them, and the world that wasn't read properly, it wasn't reviewed. If they were honest about it, they'd come back on the phone after putting you on hold and looking at things and be like, it doesn't look like this was reviewed properly. They're not allowed to say that stuff for obvious reasons. So they have to say, well, not a lot of evidence here on why it was denied. Let me take a look at it. Based on my experience, I'll tell you why I think it was denied. You're already in like casual observation and conjecture and guesswork. And this is not the area to be guessing on anything. You need to know exactly why it was denied. And you can insist upon it. There's nothing wrong with insisting on if you're not going to help me find out factual data, like why this was rejected, I have no way to revise
so I can
it.
actually appeal it. Yep.
I mean, this is just logical. How can you possibly revise an appeal? First of all, why would you spend another afternoon doing that if the first version wasn't even appreciated or properly read? Secondly, how can you come back with new and different and interesting and compelling information if you don't even know why it was rejected in the first place? What's missing? That's where Amazon's dropped the ball on sellers. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it's really important that people understand and at least the way that I view Amazon is I don't see them as the savior of all things, but I also don't see them as the devil either. They're a necessary channel. They're fraught with complications, but there's plenty of opportunity there. And so one of the things that I have seen is your level of experience with Amazon.
Mhm.
And it doesn't matter if you're making a lot of revenue or little, because you said Amazon will treat you like you've offended so many times. You need to prove to us, like your parents, like, I'm disappointed in you. It's past me being
I
upset.
like it.
I'm
Yeah.
disappointed in you. You need to prove to me, why we should reinstate you. And I
Right.
actually passed one of those places it's around my neighborhood where when I was 15 years old and I took a car out without driver's license in the middle of
Mhm.
the night. Thought it was cool, and I had two teenage girls in the back of the car with me. And policeman was like, "Hey, where's your license?" And I was like, Anyway,
Yeah.
I took a picture of it recently because I thought this is really interesting. It's like 20 years later, and I think I'm doing all right. But anyway, long story short,
But
who
you did
cares
have
about
two
my
girls with
delinquent
you,
credit?
so it was still cool
Yeah,
in one sense,
it
you
was
know?
yeah, it was still very cool.
Yeah.
I felt cool, even though a summer gym and doing community service wasn't very fun. But my
Rite of passage, my friend. Rite of
rite of passage, there
passage.
we go.
Yeah.
But what I'm getting at is that it doesn't matter how much money you're making. I see people, their first response, they're like,
Mhm.
"Why is Amazon doing this?" Like, I'm just gonna tell them they're wrong. Like, "Nope, you guys are wrong. This is not it. Please reinstate us." And I'm like, "You cannot do that." It's first of all, it's only gonna make that person who's now, and here's the thing. I worked with Amazon for a decade now, and Chris, you're saying stuff here that I'm even learning about the depths of how deep this goes. And you had said something earlier about how, you don't believe in all-in-one agencies.
Right.
Sometimes when I look at Amazon, it's a niche for some people,
Mhm.
but it's $1 billion niche. And
Yeah.
so there's a lot of areas in there when it comes to, like, reimbursements for product that Amazon's lost or stolen.
Right.
When my agency works with people, we partner with someone. I don't even attempt to mess with that.
Right.
We say we'll help with
Same for
accounts.
me.
Yeah,
Same for
we'll help
me.
with account suspensions, but at a certain point, it's like it's time to call in an expert. And so that's where I would, call you in and say, we need your
Yeah.
help. So even if you've been doing this for a long time, there are a lot of layers in this, and it's so specific to Amazon. You cannot treat it like a Target or a regular Walmart or any other kind of situation. You really don't have power in that sense.
And I've got a story that was a recent unfortunate event,
Okay. Yeah.
that I can use to illustrate why I don't like kind of the one-stop shopping, or why I loved your post on LinkedIn this week so much.
And I
Um,
only said that because I feel like we are kind of a generalist. We're really marketing and advertising, but
right.
I'm like, man, we're doing all this stuff. Are
Hmm.
we really doing every single thing super, super well? And so that, even to me, it's crazy when people are like, man, you found a good niche. And I'm like, it's a pretty big niche. There's a
Well,
lot of room here.
you probably are doing all those things really well. The problem is when people overextend themselves and they say, "Oh, you've got a problem with Amazon." And some agencies just add like a tab or a page on their
Right.
site that says like suspension help just for maybe the SEO or the keyword.
Sure, sure.
Like, so I think there's a marketing kind of salesy reason. Maybe they don't really do it, or they would just refer it to somebody like me anyway. They wouldn't actually do it.
We'll
But they
look at
want the
it.
traffic. They
Right.
want the traffic. So there's that. But then there are people way beyond that who are actively trying to help people, and they're actually doing more harm than good. And I had a
Yeah.
case recently. We all know that competitor brands are, a lot of them are being attacked by
Mhm.
black hat companies, black hat sellers, messing with their listings. Illicit back end keyword abuse is a big thing, where they can attempt to overwrite your ASIN contributions and put all these keywords into your flat files. And brand
Just the
registry
effort
doesn't
to do
prevent them
that
from doing
seems
that.
yeah, that
It's
seems
not that much
so
effort.
crazy.
Well, the thing is, there was an agency like a PPC or an ads, or market. Let's just say a marketing agency, which shall not be named,
Right.
that was trying to help them troubleshoot this. And they were just opening up seller support cases and maybe trying to use support to get through the catalog, which was like a good idea if that were enough, and it was a good first step. But the content of those cases wasn't like,
Yeah.
this is abuse, this needs to be referred to the abuse teams, these terms were not entered by us, we have to delete these illicit keywords, and then we need it referred to the abuse teams, not just to reinstate these people. Their listing was down because of this. It
Yeah.
wasn't just not winning the buy box, or
Yeah, yeah.
hey, there's some weird stuff in our flat files and we didn't put them there, or our back end that we didn't
And
put
some people don't
there.
even know what teams there are at Amazon, and saying,
Yeah.
"I need to escalate this to this team." So
Yeah.
that's key.
And I'm sure they had experience with reaching out to catalog before, most of us have, and that's great. But they got stuck immediately. It was like stop sign. What do you do at the stop sign? Well, you stop. Do you go left or right? Uh, So the client
I'm gonna wait here.
the client was like stuck, and he was stuck for a while. He didn't contact us. He didn't know that we helped with stuff like this. I mean, we have abuse reporting stuff on my site under services, but
Okay.
I mean, thank God he got to us when he did, because we were able to remedy that. I would say it still took me like a week to get his listing back up, to get the keywords deleted. I had to do an escalation form, and the agency he hired had absolutely no idea about the escalation process, about the
Yeah.
strategy of appeals. These are essentially hybrid appeals where you're petitioning for reinstatement as you would with any appeal, but you're reporting the abuse at the same time.
Yeah,
Now,
and that can look
sometimes,
very reactionary too, like, well, they're
yeah,
just doing this, and if you can't prove that, then it looks like maybe even more of a stab in the dark.
the good news is in these cases you can prove it, because the person at Amazon, whether it's catalog or the abuse prevention team, can look and see that these illicit keywords were added to your backend against your will. Obviously, you wouldn't
Okay.
have put in all these crazy terms to get yourself flagged. Sometimes they just put in like pesticide, to attract the pesticide bots. I mean, that's all it is. Trying
Okay,
to do
I had
stuff
a
like that.
client who
Yeah.
had an electronic, and
Mm-hmm.
Amazon said, "This is a pesticide," and they took it down. This was a couple years ago.
Mm-hmm.
That makes me wonder. I always thought, just something at the algorithm triggered it, and so they're like, "We got it turned back on like within the same day."
Yeah.
But I'm
One
like
of
thinking
two
now maybe it's a
things.
competitor that
It
could have
could have
done
been
that.
legit. I mean, they might have had something in their listing that said like antifungal, antimicrobial, like for a razor, whatever.
Okay.
Like electronics and all sorts of other items.
It was an antenna, by the way, so
Yeah, I
it
mean, it
I don't
depends
think it was
on what
that.
was in the language of the listing. The problem
Okay.
is so many people had their listings taken down because some of them were false positives and people appealed and got them reinstated without much fuss. Some of them, it was like terms in their detail page. They had to just delete those terms and then come back and petition for reinstatement. And that was unfortunate, but that was fixable. But the black hat services realized, oh, Amazon's scanning and algorithmically seeking out these words. If
Mm,
I can just tuck them into somebody's back end keywords, I can get them suspended overnight or right away or tomorrow.
that's
Um,
crazy.
and people were puzzled because they were like, I went through my flat files. I have nothing that could even conceivably. And of course, I would have conversations with them. And I had to be skeptical at first, like, are you sure? Let me look at what you got
Because
in there.
someone could come to you and lie
Yeah.
to you, and you have to flush out and say during discovery, "Is this actually something I wanna take on?" Because it could be cause you to be
Yeah.
not reputable.
Well, in those cases, we can figure it out if and
Okay.
sometimes they just don't know what they're doing, or they didn't do their own flat files. And so they're like, well, somebody else did that for us. So we're just going to look at it. And then they figure out, yeah, I can see what happened. But those are the gaps and loopholes that black hats understand and exploit. So they
Yeah.
know they can put pesticide type terms in your back end and get almost any listing that exists suspended, at least temporarily. They know you can fix that, so they know they only get a temporary bump out of it. But if they cheat you out of 2 or 3 days of sales at the right time of year,
Yeah.
or if it's like high volume product, I mean, I've got another seller we're working with now who sells like 400 units a day
Yeah.
of
You
each
miss out on
unit.
those sales right there, the algorithm could
Yeah,
immediately push
I
you
mean, what
down.
if each of those units goes for 45, $50, and it takes you a handful of days to? I mean, that's a lot of money.
Yeah.
So
It's
it's
not
that's why I bang that drum for, and this goes for me too. I mean, fact check what I tell you as well. Don't
absolutely. I
take me
tell
at my word on
Yes.
everything. That's not responsible.
Yep. No, so I tell
Yeah.
people when it comes to discovery, whenever they're looking, and they're like, "Oh, maybe I'm kind of concerned about price," and I'm like,
Hmm.
and I'm just very straightforward because one, I'm a big believer that that things are going to work out the way they need to, and I'm and
Right.
I'm very confident that if I show up and to do the work, God can take care of the rest. That's my
Yep.
personal belief. But what I also tell people is I want to be I don't want to rush someone into something. So
Hmm.
if they don't feel comfortable yet and they need to ask more questions, I'm like, take your time. If someone wants to rush you, it's not worth it. Now I may want the revenue for my business,
Yep.
but I'm never going to force you into something because I know that whatever effort we're going to put in 3 months, that's then going to make you you go in and say, I don't want to do this anymore. It's really a waste of our time. But I tell people, you're going to be very hard pressed to find quality. Here's the thing: quality work below this price point. You could
Hmm.
find potentially find it above this price point. Um,
Yeah.
And the way that we bill it, we really kind of partner with people. But I say you're going to be really hard pressed to find it. You're gonna need to hire an expert. I said that on a discovery, a rediscovery call, and
Hmm.
it kind of got cold for a little bit, and then talked with someone again, and they said we've been burned by two agencies, and I'm like, they're like, well, we're looking at one person to do everything. I said you can't take that
Yeah.
approach. You have to go specific, and you've been burned twice in the past, so you're not in a good position to pick that same thing again. It's like people saying, "What's the definition of insanity?" It's doing the same thing over
Yeah.
and over again, but expecting different
I
results.
hear that too. There are people like, well, we hired two of your competitors. And I'm like, wait a minute, I've only got one or two that I would even refer you to
Right.
if you didn't want to do it my way.
Yeah, okay.
And they're like,
They
some
were a
people tell me
PPC
they,
agency.
well, no, they're like, we called 5 or 10 of your competitors today. I'm like, I don't have 5 or 10 competitors. I've got maybe two others and 8 jokers that you wasted your time talking
What do
to.
you actually say
So
that to
I'm
people?
pretty
I'm sure
blunt
you do.
about that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, I'm probably like personality wise pretty direct and blunt, but also people expect me to give them like straight dope and frank information because of the
Yeah.
gravity of an account suspension.
You don't
So
have
there's no
time
time
to.
to fool around.
Yep.
There's a time element. I mean, you can't hastily appeal. That doesn't get you anywhere. So I understand they need answers fast, but sometimes they're like, well, it took you an hour to get back to me and somebody else got back to me faster. So I hired them. And I'm like, really? I don't think in an hour or 45 minutes you can properly vet who knows. I mean, I understand the urgency. No one's arguing that. But
Absolutely.
can you properly run them through the kinds of questions you need them to answer? Well, they answered to our satisfaction. I mean, they could be quoting from a blog post that they're looking at. Some of these guys have perfected their sales pitches. They've got a
Yes.
website that looks like it's been around for about half an hour. Um, it takes a lot longer than that to figure out who's worth your money. I mean, the lower price point people in my space or my niche or my industry, those are just templates. That's just copy and paste generic
Yeah.
stuff. So you're paying, I mean, that's if you want a template with fill in the blank type, I mean, that's not expert level to me, but that if that's what you want and that's how much you have to spend, that's fine. Don't expect it to work.
Yeah, well, I think
uh,
you're
yeah,
absolutely right. You have to, and you even have to know what questions to ask
yeah.
to verify someone. But the one of the things that I've noticed is, we might have lost business out to another agency or something,
Hmm.
and I know that the business development side is very strong, and it looks incredible. And I would say ours is good. We've done a great job. It's not like we've had a designer help us create a proposal
Hmm.
template so that we can put things in the right place and it looks better. But some people have really, really spent a lot of time on that. And
Yep.
so it looks great coming in, but you get eaten up and just spit out the back, unless you're like the multi-million-dollar client that's really generating a lot of revenue for
Yeah.
someone.
And I guess we're lucky, quote unquote, in a sense, in that if people decide not to work with us, unfortunately, because of how Amazon is so ready to suspend listings or suspend accounts, we are always busy 7 days a week.
Yeah.
So I don't have time to be offended. Sometimes I think we're a great fit for someone, but they're like, well, you require prepayment to get started, and somebody else, only asked me for like a thousand
There's a
bucks to get
reason for
started.
that. There's a
And I
reason
was,
for
well, I
that.
mean, I used to do the half up front, half on delivery. I don't anymore because I was chasing too many people for the other half, and I don't have time
Absolutely.
for
Yeah.
that. I'm very open about that now. I wasted too much time on that, but we don't have time to be like offended.
Yeah.
It's like I know that we're going to get enough business to keep us busy and my whole staff and team busy anyway.
Okay.
Maybe in the future we'll live in a better world where Amazon isn't so trigger happy,
Right.
and it'll mean less business for me, but that's fine.
You
I
will have
mean,
learned marketing and advertising by then, and
yeah.
you'll be running
Well,
a
I mean,
service.
I don't, dwell on this so much because we're always focused on kind of what people need and when, but I don't have to do this. I can do other things.
Okay. Yeah.
I
There's a
didn't work
level
at
of pressure that's
Amazon.
off.
I didn't graduate from college and go work for Amazon. I did other stuff for 10 years before I went to work at Amazon.
Okay.
And I'm not necessarily going to be a consultant my whole life either. So,
Yeah, yeah. I
um,
think the days of picking one thing and
yeah,
doing it for 40 years are over.
yeah.
And there honestly, there's a level of saying like, I have a lot of different skill sets, so I could pivot in a direction or go somewhere else and do something. That's
Hmm.
very freeing in a way, and it allows you to be more confident and say, look, even if I lose this business, it
Hmm.
doesn't matter because I'm giving someone the right information and I will get the next person who believes
Yeah.
in what I'm saying.
Yeah. And some people can, I mean, I can tell by talking to them or maybe in their emails, but some people can take a few ideas, run with it, and they'll write something up that I think is pretty close to the target. And I'm like, look, I mean, you don't need me yet.
Yeah.
Maybe you need me in a day or two or a week or two, but based on what you've showed me, you're at least, this is worth an attempt. This is worth a shot.
Okay.
And I'm like telling, and they'll say, well, I think I want you to do it. And I'll say, but I already looked at what you sent me.
You don't need me to.
I mean, you might need me for an hour, like a
Sure.
1 hour initial assessment, but why bother hiring me for the full thing? I mean, if you have no time and it's like you're going to rush it, then yeah, you should hire me to do it. If it's going to be just halfway, I mean, I don't recommend anyone saying, well, this is close enough.
Right. Yeah.
But some people are like, I'm going to spend the afternoon on this. I think it's pretty close. I want your opinion. And they'll surprise me. Maybe they won't even sound like they're almost all the way done with it. And I'll look at it and I'll say, yeah, this is pretty good.
We need more honest people like that in the world that can
We
just
need it
say
in the Amazon space.
in the Amazon space for sure. So,
Yeah.
where can people find you, Chris? This is the end, by the way. I don't
Yep.
know. That was a very hard end. Stop
That's all
right
right.
there. If people want to find you, like, do they look in the dumpster? Do they look behind their houses?
I don't
Chick-fil-A?
dumpster dive. Nope.
Okay.
Those days are behind me.
Okay.
So
Good.
don't look behind my house.
Don't look
I'm
behind
not,
your
yeah.
house.
Don't
Yeah.
look behind your house either, unless you live in Massachusetts.
Okay.
So the reason the conference is, by the way, just going back to seller velocity for 1 second.
Yeah. Yeah.
One last
September 23rd.
plug. September 23rd. It's a 1 day, all day conference here in Boston. One reason that it's in Boston, at least this year, is because I live here, and this is kind of a treat and a thrill for me to do a conference.
Yeah. Yeah.
Here instead of in Vegas, which is the Prosper Show, or
Yeah.
in the past we've done it in Seattle. This is not the first year for Seller Velocity. For those of you
Okay.
unfamiliar, we did it in New York.
I think some of your sponsors too are based out of that area as well, right? Or
yeah.
at least one. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Teikametrics is co-hosting this with us, and it's in the Seaport in Boston, which is kind of the central area for Amazon activity. I think in the future there'll be more conferences not necessarily associated with us that are in the Seaport. If you're unfamiliar with Boston, that's just a great central location. But it's in late September, but it's not so late that you would be worried about snow. So
Okay. Yeah.
I can guarantee there won't be any snow. No snow or your money back.
Okay, I was just gonna say, I was gonna say it, but I'm not the one paying getting the
Imagine
tickets.
what this is going to cost me if it snows. And I mean real snow. I mean New England snow. I don't want to talk about a dusting or anything.
We're not talking about Oklahoma snow or Texas
we're not talking
snow.
about Maryland where, somebody hears about the word snow on the radio and they cancel all the schools.
Yeah.
So it's September 23rd. We have a great lineup. We do have Longer Game, all one word, as the discount code for your listeners, of course. And I'm hoping you personally can attend as well, because we are encouraging people to come in person. We're taking all the expected precautions, of course.
Okay.
And it's great because we have lightning talks, which are 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay. I like that.
As well as breakout sessions. So you can attend virtually, by the way. It is possible. We always have a virtual option. You cannot attend the breakout sessions virtually. It's not logistically feasible for us to do that.
Sure.
Those are the live lightning talks that you can virtually, remotely access. So we like to give people multiple options depending on what their travel plans are and where they are. But if you can come out to Boston, September is a great time of year to be here for sure.
All right, you heard it from Chris. He lives in Boston, so he would know. Thanks so much for coming on the show. I know that I'm definitely going to be reaching out to you to help my agency to get some things taken care of, and I just honestly appreciate the information. I think the more we can learn from knowledgeable people that aren't just trying to sell you their brand, the better off we're going to be in the Amazon community.
Yeah, and in closing, I appreciate that brands have a tough time of it these days. Amazon communicates poorly, but they expect you to communicate wonderfully. And it's not easy being a brand. I admire, hats off to people that struggle with this stuff, who are just trying to sell or make nice products and manufacture good stuff, who are struggling and wasting time with some of this, back and forth with Amazon.
It's kind of heartbreaking because I know it's very difficult to it's very difficult to deal with, and you just get disheartened.
I know. I mean, I'm not really that patient of a person, and some people must have Buddhist awareness and patience to survive some of these back and forth nonsensical replies they get from Amazon. hats off to you. I applaud your efforts, and I apologize. As an ex-Amazonian, I have to apologize for some of that frustration. Even though I haven't been there for a while, it's not really my fault. But
Yeah, but he's at least being nice, people. So hats off to the
yeah,
brands. That's what we'll leave it is.
hmm
Brands, you're doing great work. If you're doing great work, keep showing up,
yeah.
doing the work, and there are good people out there that can help you.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on. All right, everybody, this is it. Show's over. Talk to you later. Thank you for listening to The Longer Game. We genuinely appreciate your time. And if you want to connect with us, please reach out to thelongergame.com. You can fill out a contact request form there. You can also find us on majority of the social media platforms, except for Twitter. That's the only one that we're not really on. This show is brought to you by my agency, Cartology, where we're helping brands accelerate growth and become profitable on Amazon. If you'd like to know more, go to thinkcartology.com, fill out a contact form, and we'll get on the phone. That's what it's all about, connecting with you and building a relationship. This show is also brought to you by Arch DevOps. They're the ones that are helping make all the logistics of this podcast happen. We are so thankful for them. If you want to get your podcast up and running and you want to automate as many things as possible, go to archdevops.com. That's ARCHDEVOPS.com. and reach out to them. They can be super, super helpful. Thanks for tuning in. I hope you have a great rest of your day and be blessed.